want to say that Gerrit is being a bit too kind. We're going to talk a little bit about Caspian, but this conversation is a... Shanti. Okay, great. Thanks everybody for coming and for sticking around, actually, because it's a Tuesday night and everyone I know is going to hit it hard tonight, right? No, this isn't Hong Kong. Okay, so Gerrit was very kind. Actually, what we really want to talk about are some of the deeper technical implications of what it means to trade crypto. Great. And Gerrit is here to take us deeper. We're going to do a bit of a technical deep dive on what it means to trade. Some of it will be where Caspian comes in, but really what I want to talk about, Gerrit, is getting deeper into some things that we deal with in trading. I'd like to start with a quick survey. So first of all, how many of you are actively working or managing trading desks of some kind, traditional or crypto? Some of you. Okay, great. And how many of you just trade in general? Okay, just with your own money, no outside money. Okay, great. And how many of you trade with algos? Okay. How many of you want to trade with algos? Okay, now we're talking. Okay, great. So, recent stat I think I found was that the number of crypto funds that spun up in 2018 is something like 466. Is that about right, Dave? 466. That's right. Okay, so for those of us, actually, I'll ask one more question. How many of you are spinning up a crypto fund? I expect a lot more hands. Come on, everybody is. My mom is starting a crypto hedge fund, which is embarrassing because she's really good at it. So what I'd like to understand is for those of us who are interested in trading and understanding what this means for institutions, what is the value of having a trading platform in crypto today?
Okay, I think one way to answer that question is to look at the people who have been setting up funds. Of the 466, you're right, that's the same number I have, that have set up funds, we've probably spoken to 150, 200 of them since we launched Caspian earlier this year. And I'd say there's really two categories of people that are setting up crypto funds. There are people that are coming from a traditional finance background. Maybe they've been running an equity fund or a fixed income fund, and they've sort of been drawn into the appeal of higher returns in crypto. When you used to have average, annualized balls of 160, in Ethereum, it's a bit lower now. There's sort of a lot more opportunities than sort of more boring asset classes like sort of equities. And the other category of trader is sort of what I would call the amateur quant. These are guys that got into crypto maybe very early. They did quite well. They're sort of semi-technical, and they've built bots to do market making and automatic trading, and they've done quite well. They said, wow, I've done very well on my own. I'm now going to try to get some outside money and set up my own fund. And I think in the two groups, there's sort of different misperceptions about what it takes to set up a crypto fund. I mean, obviously there's guys in both categories that understand the problems completely, but I'm just going to generalize a bit. And if you go to the amateur quants, they say, oh, exchange connectivity, no problem. I've already built bots to connect to 60 exchanges. I've got my algos for generating alpha. So I'm just going to go to, let's say, a pension fund. Say I've made 60%, and they're going to invest in me. There's a problem there. The problem there is that pension fund is going to start asking questions. They're going to say, okay, well, first of all, do you have an audited track record? Well, probably they don't. And if they want to go to the exchange and get the audited track record, it's probably not there. And then they're going to ask questions like, well, how do you track your P&L? Oh, I do it on a spreadsheet. And they're going to say, well, those Python scripts that are trading on the exchanges, where are the API keys stored? Oh, they're stored on a Linux machine, and my developer has access to it. And then they're going to say things like, well, how do you prevent a trader from blowing you up? Where's your compliance module? Who's your compliance manager? And I think they're going to probably get a D- in many cases, or maybe an F, and the pension fund is going to say, we'll pass. Now, if you take the guys that come from a more institutional background, they know the answers to these questions, and they might lie. They know they're not going to say that my API keys are stored on a Linux machine, and they're probably going to be more polished, and they're going to say something like, we're going to use XYZ system, but they sort of misunderstand sort of the difficulty, I think, of, or underestimate how easy it is to establish connectivity to all the exchanges. They, in the equity world, and there is sort of a standard API called Fix, and it works very, very well. It works like it's expected to work. In the crypto world, as Ben mentioned on the previous panel, each exchange has their own APIs, and some of them don't work very well. And coming from a traditional background, you think that, oh, I'm just going to write to these APIs and everything's going to work. And that's not the case. And so we address all of these problems. For the guys that are coming in from a traditional background, we provide unified access to all the major exchanges. And I firmly believe that decentralized exchanges are going to become very important. And part on our roadmap is a commitment to also providing access to the decentralized exchanges. For the amateur quants, we're providing them with a compliance system. A system where basically they can impose checks on their trading. And this will become more important as the space becomes more regulated. We're also providing them with security. We have a very good key management solution to make sure that their API keys are secure. And of course, we're providing them with a system of books and records so that all their trades flow in from the exchanges and are reconciled, and they know their positions at any given point in time, and they can compute their P&L and generate a report they can give to their fund admins. So we're addressing sort of the needs of everyone who's coming into the space and trying to set up a fund.
So you're saying if my mom hires me to trade in her fund, I can't make like Nick Gleason type of trades. I can't run off with their money or with their keys.
We can, if you have a compliance manager or a risk manager who can set up the proper limits, yes, we can enforce that.
So what are the differences? Let's say I want to move up to varsity and I want to start raising outside money, and I want to manage a lot of assets and I have a lot of people to answer to, right? So you're talking about the amateur quants, they're running their own money.
Right.
But in the case where I'm running other people's money, what other challenges do I face, and how does a trading platform help with that?
Well, again, I think the biggest challenge you face is getting the guys who are going to invest, say the pension funds, or the fund of funds, or the sovereign wealth funds, or just the the family offices, getting them to be able to check off every box in their risk matrix. And it's going to be security, it's going to be compliance, it's going to be things like having a system of books and records, it's even going to be things like best execution. So they want to know that if you're going to buy, $10 worth of crypto, that your trader isn't just going to just put the limit order in the market, right? And then being able to go back and have sort of transaction cost analysis to basically demonstrate what your slippage is and justify, why you traded that order that way. And we provide all of that, because that's what we've been doing for 14 years. Maybe it makes sense to step back a bit. And so my background is I've been working for a big chunk of my adult life for a firm called Tora. And we are a cloud-based sort of OEMS, that stands for Order and Execution Management System provider. Our clients are mostly hedge funds and prop desks. We started the business in Japan in 1999. We spun out of a hedge fund, and about 17% of all Japanese institutional volume trades through our system. We have smaller percentages of other Asian markets, and our clients trade all the markets, so basically every market on the planet. And I've been an amateur quant since 2013 in crypto. I've always wanted to add crypto as an asset class to the platform. Last year it seemed like the right time. Dave from Kenetic used to be at a firm called Oxif, and they were a client of ours, and when they were thinking about building a system, they approached us, and it seemed like, all right, Kenetic knows the crypto space very well, we know the traditional asset management space very well, we decided to form a partnership. So, we've been doing this for, we're not starting from scratch. We've just bolted crypto as an asset class on an existing platform that is tried and proven.
So, you know what you're talking about.
Well, the people I work with know what I'm talking about, yeah.
You're very honest again. So, I'm curious then. So, let's say I move up even further. I'm super varsity. I have 10 people, 15 people as a trading desk. I mean, what am I missing today? Let's say I don't have something like Caspian or a trading platform like Caspian. what am I missing when I'm managing that many people in a trading desk?
Okay, well, yes, sir. Obviously, one of the problems is, I mentioned this before, is compliance, right? If you've got 10 guys, your options right now for, let's say you'll have 1 or 2 accounts on an exchange, maybe 4 for your 10 guys. One of the challenges is if you could try to build a system and they all trade through that system, but then you're going to have to reinvent the wheel and build something you've already built. The other way might be that you allow them to trade through web interfaces. But then when they're trading through web interfaces, there's problems like half the exchanges only allow one person to be logged on at a time. And the other problem is then you really can't control what they're doing. And with a system like Caspian, we have clients that are trading sort of following the sun. They're trading all markets on the planet, and they've got desks in multiple continents. And you have a model where you can have a trader that can have a view onto every trader on every desk in every continent, right? And that's something that you don't have right now, and it would be very difficult to build from scratch.
So can you walk me through, what are the most core components of an effective trading platform? What do I need?
Okay, there is sort of the OEMS piece. That's the order and execution management piece. And so that's the piece that basically takes your order, it routes it to the exchange, it interacts with algos, it allows, potentially if you're writing your own algos, it provides sort of a unified sort of API for your algos. It also in the crypto space, there's some unique challenges. One of the challenges is that most exchanges have very sort of severe and strict throttling sort of restrictions. So you can only trade, maybe place 1 order per second. And so now if you have 10 guys trading, you have to deal with contention for all those 10 guys and managing that. And that's something we've, put a lot of resources into. So that's something the OEMS piece will manage. Then you've got a compliance piece. And the compliance piece, right now in crypto, it's probably as simple as, like junior trader cannot trade more than, $300,000 at a clip. Or he can trade no more than, $1 million a day. Or he cannot place an order that's going to impact the market more than 50 basis points. I think what's going to, in our traditional platform, we have regulated, we have clients who are licensed and regulated and trading in, basically markets across the planet, all with their own unique sets of regulations. And I think to some extent this will happen in crypto, and there will be various regulations, and as that market matures, you're going to have a requirement to have, more sophisticated compliance checks. Just an example would be in Japan. If you want to short sell a stock in Japan, and you're short selling more than 25 basis points in float of the stock, you have to report that. So a lot of firms will want to make sure that under no circumstances will their short position in that stock be more than 25 basis points. So that's an example of a compliance check, right? And we have hundreds of these rules, and I would expect that in crypto, a similar thing is going to happen. Japan is, exchanges are regulated, and I think there are going to be more and more sort of regulations, and funds are going to want to have a system that can sort of impose these sort of checks, and that's what we'll be able to provide. So compliance, and then system of books and records.
So, we're talking a lot about how trading platforms like Caspian can help the trader, the trading desk, the institution. I'm curious, how can a platform like Caspian help exchanges bring institutions into the space?
That's a good question. Obviously we would like to work with exchanges. I think, one of the things that we want to do is, we're working on a number of algos, and I think sort of the peculiarities, you can't just write one algo and expect it to work, across all crypto exchanges. There are just various peculiarities about sort of the types of liquidity that's on the exchange, the rules of the exchange, and we would like sort of to work with exchanges to sort of fine-tune our algos to those exchanges and perhaps make some recommendations about some possible API enhancements that would make it easier for our algos to interact with those exchanges.
I would also like IPA enhancements too. Can you make that in?
IPA enhancements.
Sure. Okay, great. Thank you. I'd like to also ask. I mean, one of the things that we've talked about is how, with trading platforms, because you have so many institutions trading on those same exchanges, there might be ways in which platforms can actually reduce load for exchanges. Is that true?
Potentially. I mean, if you have, I think a simple example would be, some exchanges offer batch APIs, and I think it's sometimes difficult for people to write to batch APIs, so people will sort of underutilize batch APIs. And one of the when I was mentioning earlier about sort of this idea of contention, if you have 10 traders placing algo trades through maybe 10 bots, all executing on the same exchange, I think there is a potential, for example, for at this aggregation level, for us to aggregate 20 different orders that are about to go out at the same time and put them in a batch API and reduce the load of exchanges. I think there's probably other things we can do as well.
That's great. I guess my last question, before we go to questions from the audience, my question is, I'm ready for Caspian. I'm ready for a trading platform. What can I do to best prepare to be onboarded for your system? I have a multi-strat hedge fund. I've got 4 or 5 traders. I want to get on this. What can I do to prepare my fund or my entity to work with Caspian?
Really, I mean, if you have that, you're ready to go. There's nothing else you need to do. You need to sign the business agreement, and we can onboard you.
Okay, I'll send it to Mom.
Okay.
Thanks. Does anybody have any questions? Because this guy knows everything you want to know about the technical aspects of Caspian, and that is not an understatement. Or am I scaring you? I scare myself sometimes. Anybody? Yep.
And just if you could tell a couple of words about the challenges you had while managing the private keys and security.
I mean, the challenges we had is that every single client or prospect we spoke to about the system, the first question they asked was, what do you do with the API keys? I mean, there's some very well, publicized recent attacks like the Binance attack, where people harvested API keys from Binance and then used it to manipulate the prices of certain coins. So what we ended up doing is coming up with a solution where we've built sort of a hardened service that hosts all the API keys, and we allow our clients to actually run an instance of the service if they want to, or we can run the service for them. And then when our backend needs to make an API request, it authenticates with the service. The service then signs the request, passes the signed request back to our backend, and the backend makes it to the exchange. And this allows us to basically never have to take custody of anyone's exchange API keys, because we make the service available to clients. And you can then, on that service, you can run things like checks. You can run things like, is this a withdrawal request? In which case, you immediately reject it. You can do things like risk checks, like, is this a request that's likely to impact the market more than 20 basis, 100 basis points, and reject it, right? And so that's what we've done. We've also, one of our advisors is a very well-known cryptographer who's sort of the father of the modern hash function. And one of his areas of expertise is sort of secure multi-party computing, where you can basically do, in a distributed manner, you can do things like basically run sort of hash functions, which is sort of how, or HMAC functions, which is how, for those of you who've sort of, basically used API keys to authenticate requests. And we're going to be working on a distributed version of the service so that we host a node and that the client can host a node, and we have sort of half the key and they have half the key, and collectively we assign all the requests. So that's sort of what we're doing in the area of sort of making it very difficult for adversaries to compromise exchange keys.
Do we have another question? I have a question. Gerrit, when funds and other institutionals have this tool at their beck and call, how do you see this changing the market? What kind of changes do you expect in our market?
Well, I think when you have tools like ours available, when there are good custody solutions, And when I think you have sort of more sort of crypto-savvy fund administrators and possibly some more regulation, when you have those 3 or 4 things, you're going to see a lot of more institutional money coming into the market. Then I think you'll see things like pension funds and sovereign wealth funds allocating, some number of basis points to a crypto allocation. And that really, I think, can only mean one thing. I think it means prices are going to go to the moon. So.
You heard it here. To the moon. Anyone else? Any other questions? Everybody, you have one more? Yeah? Okay. I was about to thank Gerrit, but.
All right, hi. So let's say I'm an equity trader who is was lucky enough to know the Tora system, right? And now you're giving me Caspian, and I want to trade cryptos. What would be, let's say, top 2 things that I need to change, or I'm not familiar with, or like really where the learning curve will have to happen?
There's really, the color scheme is different, the icons are different, but other than that, instead of trading with a broker, you trade with an exchange. But other than that, there's really, not a whole lot of differences.
So if you know Tora, you know Caspian.
Exactly.
Everybody, let's give Gerrit a huge round of applause.